Let us know where you're joining from. Thank you, Manish. So before I begin today's session, I would like to know from you what you understand by climate risk and the role of banks in managing or mitigating it. Would anyone like to go for it? What do you understand by climate risk and how is banking involved? Hi Shikha, hi Srishti, hi Debulina. Welcome all of you. So how many of you already know Aspire for Her? Would anybody like to share? Hello everyone. I just asked a question. What do you look forward to in today's session? Any thoughts? We are waiting for more of us to join in. So in the meanwhile, please introduce yourself and tell us what you expect from today's session. Risk involved due to weather changes. Yes, Manisha, you are very right. Okay. Recently joined Aspire. Yes. So once again, welcome everyone to today's session. Before I introduce our esteemed speakers for today, I'd like to take a minute to introduce Aspire for Her. It was started in 2020 by Madhura Das Gupta Sinha, who is a career banker herself. She had a vision and mission to empower 1 million women to enter and stay in the workforce by 2025. And we are happy to report that just today we crossed the 8 lakh mark. So how do we do this? We do this by a 5-point mindset change model called E cube is equal to MC cube. And E cube is where we want all women to be, which is in employment, entrepreneurship, and education. And we do this by mentorship, offering courses, cohorts, career previews of women who have already succeeded in their careers because we believe if she can see it, she can be it. And most importantly, we use the power of communities and networks. So, Women in Banking is one such community, and we are very honored to have had some very impactful women leaders come to the community to empower and uh, inspire all our community members. This Today's session is part of an ongoing series of fireside chats with powerful women leaders from top banks in India. And in our previous session, we welcomed Raj Kamal Vempati, who is the head of HR at Axis Bank, who truly inspired everyone. And in today's session, we welcome our dynamic moderator, Naveeta Agarwal, who is the former managing director at Deutsche Bank, along with our very special guest, Bidisha Mitra, who is the head of climate risk at Barclays Corporate and Investment Bank. So before we dive into their detailed introduction, I request Farisha to please start the first poll. Please, everyone, answer the poll questions on your screen so that we can know you a little better and what you expect from today's session. I hope everybody can see the poll questions. If you have
I
any
can. Am
questions,
I supposed to also respond to the poll? I'll go ahead and do
no.
it.
So yes, most of you are new to how banks manage climate risk or somewhat familiar. Many of you are from our return to work community who are women on a career break. Some of you are leaders. That's amazing. Welcome, everyone. I will begin with introducing our moderator, Naveeta Agarwal. She is a career banker with 35 years of experience in the industry. Post her MBA from IIM Calcutta, she started her career with Exim Bank in 1983 in project finance. From Exim, she moved into corporate banking with Indus India Bank, managing large and mid-sized corporate clients. In 2006, she joined Deutsche Bank and held various leadership roles in credit risk management. Post her retirement from DB in 2023, she has focused on her passion volunteering with organizations engaged in children education and women in careers. We are very lucky to have you, Naveeta ma'am, as our mentor for the women in banking community. And our very special guest for today, Bidisha. She currently heads the Climate Risk India and is part of senior risk leadership team in Barclays. She has 15 plus years of diverse experience in financial and banking industry across multiple roles in wholesale credit risk, country risk, regulatory risk, valuations, and more recently, climate risk. She has led and delivered major strategic regulatory projects, built high performing teams as part of her journey. Bidisha has worked in Standard Chartered Bank and IBM Asia previously, where she predominantly worked on credit risk management. She holds an SCR GARP certificate and completed her MBA Finance after graduating in chemistry honors. On the personal front, Bridisha is the mother to her 4-year-old daughter. She enjoys spending time with her, and reading, music, and travel are next on her list of favorites. She is a strong advocate of equity over equality and believes that grit and resilience are the two most important attributes to have. Vidisha, it's wonderful knowing you and welcome to AFH. And thank you so much for your valuable time for today's session. Over to both of you.
Thanks, Cyril. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks, Cyril. That was a very kind introduction.
Yeah.
So, good evening, friends. And I hope you all are all excited for our fireside chat today, which I'm sure is going to be both informative and interesting for all of you. So, please allow me 2 minutes to just set the context for today's chat. Let us start with what is climate change. As you're all aware, that it refers to long-term shift in Earth's climate system. So temperature, rainfall patterns, wind patterns, all this resulting from human activities. We know that the global temperatures are rising. The last decade was the hottest ever recorded in the world. Climate change has intensified frequency and severity of storms, led to rise in sea levels, and threatens our marine ecosystem and coastal communities, rise in hunger and malnutrition, and other catastrophic effects. It has placed millions and destroyed livelihoods, and it poses a critical challenge for the global communities. Although, as far as India is concerned, the per capita greenhouse emission is among the lowest in the world, but given the large population we have, we are the third largest carbon emitter globally. But our country has taken a big step forward. It has announced an ambitious target to achieve net zero emissions by 2070. Climate change is also reshaping the landscape of the financial sector. And in case you're wondering what banking sector has to do with climate change and what does it mean for all your careers, let us speak to our esteemed guest today, Bidisha Mitra, a reputed banker with deep and varied experience and a subject matter expert on this critical topic. So with this, I welcome Bidisha. Hi, Bidisha. Great to have you with
Thanks,
us. It's a
Naveeta.
pleasure.
Yeah, it's a pleasure here to talk to you, Naveeta, and just meeting and interacting with everybody who has joined online.
Thank you. So let's begin with an icebreaker as our audience is eagerly waiting to hear from you. So your career path, let's start with that. From chemistry honors to climate change at Barclays, it's inspiring. Can I ask you why banking and why risk management?
Right. So I have decided I'm going to be honest and I'm not going to give any pre-baked cliche answers around this because I think if I can share my story in the most pure form, I believe that's the best way to kind of share stories, really. So why banking? That's an accident. There's no great story behind it. It was just by accident I landed in banking. I Chemistry was something that I loved, and the reason I got into chemistry was I wanted to do a PhD in something in genetics and biochemistry and all that flashy scientific stuff, right? It's very interesting that I used to have an environmental science paper in my chemistry days, and then life has come like a full circle. And here I am 15 years down the line. I'm like doing something where it's more finance, but it also has this element of chemistry. And it still reminds me of my chemistry days because some of the topics are kind of, so that's interesting. But I think the reason I got into, I did MBA because I think like everybody else, I was looking for a career where I can earn some money, get independence. So which is why I did MBA. And I loved mathematics. That used to be something of my first love. People ask me, well, what's my first love? Mathematics was my first love. It was not some boy. So I think because of that, I felt, I want to get into some topic or area which kind of has similar inklings. So it just made finance just naturally made sense, like it's a bit analytical. It has that mathematical aspect. So I got into finance, and then I landed up through campus placement in a bank, which is why I said that it's by accident. I didn't choose to be, oh, I want to be in a bank. It was just the job I got now. But once I got into the bank, risk management is something that I chose. That was not accident. So I think I would probably say first one is an accident. Second one was a choice I exercised because I felt that is closest to who I am as a person and I can enjoy doing. And that's how I got into risk management. As a trainee, I was kind of, you get 5, 6 roles to perform. And I remember that I got few roles, and then the roles that I was getting, didn't seem very interesting. And it was related to retail banking and, other things in operations and technology. And then I got exposed to risk. And then I was like, okay, this is something that sounds quite interesting. This seems like my cup of tea. And I made it a point that, I bring that to management, that if I, for the final term, once you do a rotation, where I would like to be was in risk. Incidentally, there was an opening and I actually interviewed for it because I think through the rotation, they were not able to put in risk. But luckily, there was a interview that happened, and I just prepared like anything for that interview because I wanted it. And I know I stayed up till 3 a.m., 4 a.m. preparing for that interview because I knew that I have to get it. I have to be the best at that. And I did crack the interview. So that's how I ended up being in risk. And that was in credit risk role in Standard Chartered Bank. That's the first role I did.
Very interesting. A story really resonates with me. I mean, this is probably my second or third fireside chat I'm doing for Aspire for her. And I've still to come across somebody saying that I chose banking as a career. I mean, I too accidentally landed up as a campus placement and got a bank. And that's how it starts as a banking career. Very, very, very honest and very candid opinion, I would say. So let's go back to our original question. What's the relationship between climate change and banking? Our topic for today.
Right. So to put it very simply, banks are interested in financial risk, in reputational risk, right? So banks, if I have to explain to, I think we have a mixed crowd. So what does a bank do? We give money to companies, and then we take interest on that money. So our business model is the better you're doing at your business, the more money you're generating, the more loans you take from us, the more interest you pay us, my revenue grows, right? Now, if these companies are affected by something whereby their capacity to grow, whereby their capacity to pay back our loans are impacted or hampered, that's where as a bank, I'm worried about the risk, right? That, you cannot pay my interest because that's my earning. Now, there are various factors that we have always seen that impacts corporates, and these corporates are across different sectors. They can be in power, utility company, it can be your Zara's and H&M's that we all buy from. It can be the Hyundai company that we are loaning to, we have a car from. It can be from all sectors, right? So banks are exposed to all sectors. Now, what are we worried about? Like I said, we are worried about the capacity that for these companies to pay our interest and to pay back the loan. I mean, if required, pay back the amount that they have loaned from us. Now, what can hamper them? There can be events that can hamper them. There can be business cycles that can hamper them. There can be business specific things that impact that company, right, as a part of their running. And that's what risk management is all about. One of those factors is climate. Now, you would ask that why suddenly we're talking about so much about climate and we haven't in the past. The reason being, climate was always a factor that impacted our lifestyle. It was just not big enough for us to take notice of, or the impact of it was not big enough either that we could see as human beings, or we could feel through different channels, either in the form of too much rain, sudden heat, like Naveeta mentioned, suddenly the temperature flaring up, or we couldn't see how, in terms of corporates or companies that might get impacted. So I think all of you might have seen the news around hurricanes in US, right? So US is a country which is very much exposed to hurricanes. And we have heard about Katrina, we have heard about all the other, then there was Helen, and there was something in Spain. If you observe and just take a step back, the news items, if you just focus on the news, the number of hurricanes that are happening, that is devastating lives, livelihoods, real estate. When I say the word real estate, that's where a bank has loaned somebody money to build a project, and that has been completely devastated by a flood or a hurricane. Then there are wildfire in US has completely devastated a complete power grid, for example. The recent LA wildfires, I think all of us, it's a couple of 200 odd billion dollars of losses. When I say losses, it means every bank who has loaned or an insurance company who has to pay back the mortgage insurance, they are at risk. So through these events, these affects the corporates or the clients or the businesses, and through those businesses, it impacts the bank's risk. That's one line. There's another line. There's another path which we get impacted. Um, so this term is called physical risk for everybody. If everybody wants to know a buzzword out of this session, physical risk is the term for you to know that I talked about right now. There's another term that you'll hear that's called transition risk. It is not related to this physical events. So regulators, everything's related by regulators and governments and policies. So because there has been enough movement around climate action that we need to do something about, the fact of the matter is the global heating is happening, the ocean currents are getting impacted, and we will see an impact in future. So if regulators are asking us to be careful about, who are you funding to? Are you funding to oil companies? The major polluter for CO2, if everybody wants to know, are oil and gas companies, as well as power utilities companies. The maximum carbon dioxide gets, produced by them. So if a regulator is asking us to restrict our exposure to them, so it creates a risk for the companies that if you're not having an alternative fuel, like you're not using solar or wind to move away from these CO2 emissions, the regulators will be on top of you. The banks become the weapon through which the regulators exercise, because we increase the interest rate, hence forcing companies to kind of look for alternative solutions. That if you are an oil and gas company purely, 30 years down the line, we want to be a 50-50 renewable, 50-50 kind of renewable versus non-renewable, renewable being wind, solar, all these non-CO2 emitting businesses, then you have to move your business. And that creates risk for those companies, which means it creates risk for the bank. So it's a double way. I would say there are two ways it gets impacted.
Absolutely. Um, so risk management is a very important topic, I would say. In fact, one of the definitions of banking is also managing risk. And in addition to lending, as you brought out, that's how you make money, that's your business. But in terms of once you do the lending, risk management becomes the next critical topic for a
Right.
bank. So when you think about risk management, historically, traditionally, you've always thought about credit risk management. So whether the
Right.
money you've given is going to come back or not come back. But
Yes.
today, it's a much more evolved field when you think about risk management. So what are the other types of risk that Indian banks or banks in India focus on, and how is it important?
Right. So I think it would be very similar what multinational banks focus on versus what Indian banks focus on from a traditional risk management. So I'll just probably use the same, similar answer for that. So now I think credit risk, everybody's aware, like you mentioned, credit risk is a traditional risk. Traditionally, you would also have market risk. You would have liquidity risk that a bank is. So market risk is essentially if there are market movements happening with more opening up of markets, more investments in various instruments in the market, any movement in the market creates a kind of a short term risk for investors, banks included, and that's one risk management that we do. Correct. Then we have banks also kind of, whenever we are taking the funds, we are then also deploying the funds to kind of earn a differential, right? So the liquidity is a very important aspect that, we are investing in the right liquidity, we are earning right returns on it. So liquidity risk, again, is, I would say, and then I will extend that to capital risk. So again, capital risk is very important. Capital risk being, I think, for those of you who are new to a banking term, it's essentially how do you ensure the bank has sufficient capital that, there are retail people like you and me who are putting our savings in the bank, right? And here is the bank going and investing, into risky mergers and acquisitions or, investment banking stuff. So essentially, regulators want you to keep sufficient capital, which means you should have enough funds that in case of a negative event, you can take care of your, people who are kind of investing in your, or in terms of your, I won't use the liability asset term, it might be confusing for people. So essentially, if somebody has kept money with you, you should be able to give back their money at any point in time, and you should not be risking their, savings. So you need to maintain enough buffer or capital in place while you do these activities. So I think capital risk is very, very critical, and regulators are always interested in it. There are a lot of interesting work that happens around it. Then we have, I think, more recently, I think we will talk more about AI risk, cyber fraud. I think this has suddenly popped up in the last, I think, whatever decade or so, because, like just technology shift is like has happened so much in the last couple of years that, there is too many platforms, too many new technologies out there, right? Which we need to be aware of, and which, kind of incorporates risk in the way we function. So operation risk, I would say, traditionally, whatever was operation risk, today it's a very different operation risk that we are looking at. So capital risk, liquidity risk, operation risk, technology risk in terms of running the banks, in terms of safeguarding ourselves across, external parties who might be hampering fraud. And then, of course, we have now climate risk, ESG. Climate risk, we use it in a narrow term. I think it's more environment. So you have other aspects of like social governance, all of these come into play. So ESG risk is something which is more new age. And I think technology will continue to shift, evolve, and we will see those impacts as new arenas that, will have opportunities as well for people, because you will need talent who are having those skill sets which do not exist today. So people have to upskill them. So again, those areas will keep on coming. So AI risk, I would say, there's nothing called AI risk that exists per se in a formal manner, but because we work on a lot of AI stuff, we know that we are worried about certain things. So then, there has to be in future state, there has to be something on those lines. People who can understand AI and know how it can impact banks, or how the risk might translate into a financial risk. I think that will be interesting to see.
Awesome. I think that was a very nice way you put across in a way people can understand what are the various risk types. Very difficult topic, honestly.
Yes.
Uh, I would like, could you share an example with our audience today of a project or an initiative as a lead for climate risk or ESG that you have taken
Mhm.
as part of your role, which kind of amplifies for the people how exactly banks are mitigating climate risk?
So I cannot share the details. Of course, there's like a lot of sensitive, firm wide, because a lot of things we do in house. But I can give some maybe high level generic things without going into the details of it. So, like I was talking about transition risk, right? It is very difficult to kind of, or even physical risk, right? One of the major challenges that you have in climate is how do you interpret how an event, like whether companies are transitioning into non CO2. Now, suddenly Trump has come in. He's saying drill, baby, drill. I don't care about CO2. So is the risk there or is the risk gone? I think all these elements, how do you filter the noise and get the real issue, transfer it into something which is measurable as a financial or a credit risk? I think the biggest correlation that we see with climate risk or ESG risk is with credit risk. It's not so much about markets because it's a more slow burn, long drawn, not just a sudden thing will happen. Sudden things will happen through physical risk, like an event, but it's a more slow burn impact that you'll see. So the closest to it is credit risk because credit risk is also a bit long term, right? Now, we worked on certain projects where we actually tried to kind of filter down on the more problematic sectors which will have higher climate risk. Once we reach there, we have figured out a mechanism to transfer and change that into some assessment of credit risk. So I know as a credit officer or when I'm assessing a client that should I be worried about this client or not? So we did work on something which was very interesting because nobody has done something like this. We are using our judgment on a lot of things. There are very few people who are expert, and it's an interdisciplinary, as we call sometimes interdisciplinary PhDs. It's like an interdisciplinary thing. Even I'm learning. While you called me an SME, in banking and credit risk maybe, but in climate I still feel like I'm a student, and because everything is, I'm learning new and everything is changing. While I'm learning in last year something, this year it has changed, so you keep on just learning and you have to apply that in a mechanism by which you're assessing that risk. So very, very challenging, interesting, gray cell activating activities. But we did work on a framework. We have figured out a way, not just me, my team, some of my very knowledgeable colleagues, my boss who sits with the OE as well. And, we have worked out on certain things which helps the bank to assess where, which portfolio, which areas are my climate risk at, should we be worried about it, taking steps to mitigate that risk. How do we monitor them? How do we ensure you cannot just stop funding like that, especially in the current climate of what's going on across. So how do you still safeguard yourself while the political landscape keeps shifting? So yeah, so we did work on some of these elements. Don't know if that
Interesting.
answers your question. I know I'm keeping
No,
it vague, but
so actually, I think all banks are working on re-engineering their credit risk models to incorporate climate risk and the
yes.
transition risk. As you rightly pointed out, the physical risk and the transition risk, how it can be captured as part of the credit risk assessment. So yeah, it was very interesting, I would say. Um, Let me shift gears here and come to a little different topic.
Mhm.
So, um, as a banking landscape, when you think about it, what do you think is evolving in the banking landscape? What are going to be the future growth drivers for banks in India?
Right. So I think a lot is changing, has changed, will continue to change, really. And that's a great question, Naveeta. I think we are in the midst of like literally as we call it, like, like a prism shift or like a big shift. So uh, I think technology will be a big factor. I think currently, if you had asked me maybe 2 years back, I would give a very different answer. I think currently the geopolitical scenario would be a big factor. How things are shaping up. There's a lot of uncertainty around. Risk management will be important. That will just say it's just the way the risk management happens will change. So in terms of, if I just focus on technology for a bit, right? So I think models will become, there's a lot of data, right? A lot of good things have happened. So for example, there's a lot of data available out there, but then there's too much data available. How do you manage the data? How do you ensure the right data is coming? You need people who understand data, who understand how to mine this data and get you the right data sets. So that's the skill sets that will become important, and the banks or even financial institutions in general would kind of uh, you know be helped by. So not only getting the data, but getting the data in the right way with the right credibility so that you can work with that data. Now that there's so much availability of data out there, it does help us with modeling. So of course, modeling will become more and more, I think, become more and more important because now that data is available, you can model whatever, you can change your scenarios. But then comes the uncertainty and the events around it. In the last 10 years itself, or maybe 20 years, 15 years, we have seen a COVID, which was like almost like a black swan event, as we call it, unexpected risk We have seen 2008 crisis and everything, right? So in a very short span, there's a lot which has happened. So modeling will become even more important. How do you, this uncertain scenarios, bring in the climate aspect, bring in the uncertainty of globalization failing, so every country becoming more isolated, and they can call it as the failure of globalization and say, oh, we want to do our thing. That is going to recreate more risk around how organizations function, because we are connected now across the board. Any event that happens in the remote corners of China, in what way it's going to come into your supply chain, into your one client, into your risk books, it is very hard to kind of, the contagion risk, or the whole connected risk, as we call it. I think that is becoming more and more important. So I think those are some of the things that we should be aware of. AI, I think generative AI is gonna, there's a lot of hype. I will again say, we use Copilot, we use all kinds of Gemini tools and stuff. There's a lot of hype, but in terms of probable use cases still, but it is capable. It is capable of transforming the landscape. So we should know AI, all of us, like even me, I feel, we need to understand Gen AI. We need to understand how modeling works. We need to use it in our regular life so we are prepared for it. So that is going to transform. So again, fintech space. Today, Amazon, you can actually have something like a product where you buy now, pay later. So Amazon is a bank, right? The traditional banking setups are there, will be there because of the regulatory aspects. But you have Amazon as a bank, you have fintechs coming up and, kind of uh, doing payment solutions. So it's going to completely revolutionize the whole financial sector. So there will be opportunities, not just in banks, I would say, but organizations functioning as bank. But then I also see there's a lot of heavy regulation that will also start coming. So compliance will be important to understand. You can, I think that is a scope, I believe, compliance and, risk, cyber risk, AI risk, all these will become more data risk. All of these will become very critical for India. But I guess India has a huge population. So I think, and most of the banks are not so exposed abroad, outside of India. They're more concentrated within India. So it's all mostly Indian factors which should impact them. Uh, on the positive note. But yeah, I think these are the things that I feel as key highlights the next 10 years or so.
Awesome. So picking up from your mention on need for data analytics and data scientists, um, if I say that banks are more like a melting pot where every kind of talent is required and kind of fits in. So the traditional understanding that banks, you need to have a finance background, you need to understand accounting, is kind of outdated. Today, if you think about whether it's you're an engineer or whether you're a statistician or a mathematician or a modeler or a computer scientist or whatever field you can think about, yourself coming in from a chemistry background. So you require all kinds of talent in today's banking
Yes.
industry. What would be your advice to younger generation, and we have some of them on the call today, as to what are the skill sets they need to focus on, both in terms of technical skills and soft skills for
Right.
developing a career in banking?
Right. That's a great question, Naveeta. So I'll first cover technical and then I'll come to soft skills. And I'm assuming that this is for, you're saying these are for people who are just joined,
Yeah,
or they're just planning to join banking.
grads looking
Grads.
for starting a career in banking.
Right. So I think for them, what will be important is, of course, you have to know your basics. I will always say that if you're applying for a bank, you need to understand what is banking. You need to be very clear on, that how a bank operates. You need to understand, the main tenets of banks. And I think, but what we require in banking is as you said, it's a diverse area. You can come from a technology background, right? That is always going to be relevant. If you are doing something in technology, that is always relevant. Then you can upskill yourself by understanding how different areas of banking functions. Once you get your entry point, right, you can get an entry point as a grad, like you can do an MBA, standard MBA, or you can just do your grad and apply to banks. You can get into risk
मारो मत
management. You
मारो
can
मत मारो मत
uh,
लग रहा है
sorry, I think there's
नहीं
Somebody
somebody at
needs
the
to go on
background.
mute, please. Yeah, sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
thanks. Yeah, no problem. So I think then what happens is that you can, but I think typically, if I have to say, analytical skills, if you write, that is always going to be important and useful in a bank. Being able to kind of kind of, problem solve. That is always going to kind of help. If you can problem solve, that is something that everybody kind of is interested in, right? So that's something that can help. Then I think I would say being able to make meaningful outcomes, inferences from multiple sets of informations, or that is something that these are things which are very basic tenet. I'm not talking about whether you're a tech grad or a risk grad or something, but these are things which are useful for a bank in any area of work, and if you want to excel in that area. Soft skill, I would say that, of course, you have to be smart enough to kind of, collaborate with people, how to work in problem solving. It's not always your problem. Sometimes the problem is everybody's problem. You just need to bring everybody together and, have that conversation to kind of, be confident about your own abilities, to kind of showcase that, and willing to take on more responsibilities. Everybody loves someone who takes accountability and responsibility. Nothing has changed in the last 15 years of my career till date. That's what matters. That if you are a person, you raise your hand, I want to do this and I can do this, then that's what matters. There could be certain elements of politics, typical corporate issues, and that is with everyone at every layer we have seen. I'm sure, Navita, with your experience, you have seen enough of it. I see enough, and even the new ones who would be coming in, they would see. How do you navigate such tough situations? Don't lose your heart, don't lose your motivation, because career is not a 1 year, 2 year stint. I would say it's a, so having that kind of mindset that, okay, there could be politics, there could be difficult times, but I need to thrive, I need to learn, and I need to just, keep my head straight around the goal. I think that's a skill set, I would say. I have seen again and again people always being successful when they have this kind of mindset. I don't know if does that answer your question?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you've given very, I would say, very practical advice to our audience today on how to navigate across. And I think it's not only limited to banking, it is applicable to every
Absolutely.
organization that you would want to
Absolutely.
work with. It's so important to have great networking skills, have resilience, have patience, I would say, and be ready to volunteer. I mean, it's always, as you said rightly, that people love volunteers, people who love
Yeah.
uh, anybody who's willing to take on more responsibility
Yeah.
and show that they're capable of delivering. I
Yeah,
think that's
sometimes we are just
important.
too much in our bubble. We think that, oh, like I'm shy, I don't want to, raise my hand. But actually people appreciate that when you do that. People actually appreciate that. So don't hide behind.
Absolutely. And just a corollary question to that, given the kind of, you did highlight AI and technology and how it's affecting the banking sector. Uh, what would you advise the finance professionals or people who are already in the banking sector? How can they upskill themselves to get themselves aligned with what's changing or transforming in terms of technology in banks?
Yeah. So I think we have to become much more tech savvy for sure. I would say that if you can get your hands around a Gen AI course, absolutely do it. Understand it. It's not going to go away. It's only going to get more and more embedded. Prompt engineering, a lot of people talk about that how do you make an AI work? It can do a lot for you, but then you should know the right prompt, and it comes through practice when you do more and more. And while I'm saying this, I'm myself not great at it, I would believe. But I think for the younger generation, I think it's even more important that they are I suppose they probably are. But I think how do you use that, when you come with that knowledge, or even for tools like, even like now, I think again the models and everything will get more upgraded. We had Python R, there was a phase, and Python R is still relevant. It's not like they're not, right? So I would say that, be aware of, there's a lot of changes happening. Be aware, get your your understanding around Gen AI, how it functions, in which sectors they kind of have application. What are the applications that you can talk about? We still do not have a like a big big use case that we're using, but we see it in pockets happening. So at which stage somebody having that knowledge of applying Gen AI to different kind of financial models or working is obviously going to be something that is going to be critical. So that's one I would say from a technology point is very important. But I think more or less, if you want to be in the financial field, you need to understand first the finance bit of it, of course. That's the most important thing. So I think if you do, like, you can do MSCs, you can do MBAs, but I think MBAs are, again, you just cannot do it from just any institute and expect to land a great job. And in futuristically, you have to quickly upgrade yourself, because the more basic jobs will be taken by AI is the understanding, is the prediction that the simpler tasks would go. So creativity will still be required, analytical aspect would still be required. So even if you go through a run-of-the-mill MBA and get into a corporate, ensure that you upgrade yourself. If you 5 years ahead, you have to look at your career, you should be the relevant one in the market to be kept in that job. And that is only going to happen when you know how to understand AI, we know how to run it, you have the analytical mind, you can come up with solutions. I think those will still be very critical. But I think today, like you mentioned, I don't think there's only one path to get into banking, but you have to be good at what you do. You have to showcase that you are good at what you do. That's the most important starting point. So whichever field you're doing, English literature, you're doing HR, you're doing, be the best at that first, and then let's expand that further. That would be my advice.
Absolutely, absolutely. Agree, totally. And also, would you think that people should raise their hands, as you said earlier, get involved in projects that are coming up in terms of transforming systems, transforming processes?
Absolutely.
So that gives you brilliant experience, in terms of
Absolutely.
what's changing.
Disruption. Absolutely. Yes. Transformation projects are always a great place to kind of get involved in. And if you're interested in ESG, there are a lot of courses out there. I mean, we hire from like I have my grads who are from Madras School of Economics who have done their environment science. We take from Delhi School of Economics, Delhi University, and also there are a lot of environment science courses with financial risk element, more applied kind of roles. So you can again explore those if you want to get into ESG risk, because that's not going to go away. I mean, Republicans may not stay 4 years down the line. The uncertainty is very much there, and the climate risk is only going to increase. So that's not going to go away.
Absolutely. You can't wish it away, even though the president
Yeah.
does want to wish it away.
Just can you give me just 1 second? I
Sure,
think I'm just having some trouble with the battery. I'll just pause and I'll quickly get my charger. So sorry about
sure.
that.
No worries.
Thank you everyone for staying tuned. We do have a Q&A session towards the end, so please post your questions in the chat section and we will take them up in due time.
Absolutely, absolutely. Love to have your questions on board. And Vidisha is going to join us just in a second. We need to be a little more patient and wait for her. But honestly, she's been a great uh, speaker today. Very candid, and the way she's put across is all a very complex topic in very simple terms for all of us. I think it's just amazing.
Thank you, Dave. Interesting to know that.
So we have somebody Dave has written a very interesting question. Maybe I'll take this up when Vidisha comes on. There she is with
Hello
us already.
everyone. Yes, standard
Okay,
problems with
no
charging.
worries. We already have an interesting question. We'll take it a little later.
Mhm.
So let's just continue for now. Um, we have seen in Aspire for her whenever there are openings available, people coming from very diverse backgrounds, solid experience in their own fields. So whether it's technology or whether it is transformation or
Mhm.
whether it is audit, uh, not necessarily from banks,
Mm.
but from various other sectors and organizations. So as a banker, uh, how would you assess these kind of candidates and what would you recommend to them?
Right. Um, so like so when you see audit, I see like common ground with compliance, and even our, like, we have audits as well, right? So I think there are certain commonality around the type of work that you're doing, so you can apply it to different corporates. It's just that the sector changes, right? But it's still the same mechanics of it. Now, when bankers look for it, of course, I mean, there's always if somebody has done it in a bank, the first, you're that's your muscle memory. Oh, let's go for the banker. Let's just go for the bank. That's a standard response. But I think that's not always the case. So if you have the right talent, and yes, it might be easier for a person from the bank to get the first call because just that they fit the best. But I think there are a lot of transferable skill sets. So what I would say for these set of people who want to apply to bank, I think that's your question, that what can they kind of do about getting that role or getting into a banking sector with the similar
Yes.
skill sets. I think again, I think I'll go back to my point one around, of course, you should be the best at what you do. So you must be able to showcase and explain why, even though you are from a different sector, your skills are transferable and will be useful in banking. That's number one. You should always, in your answer, I would say you should bake that in your answer when you're answering a question around if you're shortlisted. Second is you must be co-prepared under in explaining what banking, that you understand banking very well, even if just by from a theoretical aspect. You should kind of be able to showcase that you do understand how banks function and some nuances of banking, where an audit to a manufacturing sector could be slightly different from auditing an internal bank's, risk department, let's say. So there are certain nuances that are there. So I think, first of all, stating the commonality of why it's a transferable skill set spans across, then also bringing in the nuances of why it's different and that you are aware of those differences. That's second. And then the third bit, I would say, just go prepared understanding of which company that you're applying to, understand the bank, understand the banks, just read their latest annual report, what's happening in the bank. I think those are just generic stuff. But these two, I would be saying that these are two key things. Is there something more in terms of technical skills you wanted me to cover? But top of
No,
my
I think
mind, I could.
I think it's a very good suggestion that people should kind of prepare themselves, be one strong on their domain knowledge, so be
Yes,
prepared for any questions that come on that. And secondly, in terms of having a very basic understanding on, as you said rightly, theoretical understanding of a bank and how it functions, and especially the particular function for which you're applying,
yes,
how it
yes.
works in a banking framework. I think that would really
Yeah.
help.
And also sometimes, Navita, like just talking to your friends, like just speak to some of your friends who are in banking already, right? Just you'll get it from the horse's mouth and they will be able to help you. I don't think we ask for help enough. So I think we should just reach out to somebody in banking through your Aspire for Her networking, maybe. Just reach out to any of the, you have great mentors here. Maybe reach out and seek their help around, hey, I have an interview. This is what it is about. Can you share some, maybe, top hints where I can crack the interview? Something like that might help, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So coming to a little more personal topic now,
If we have not bored everybody to death already with
let's
climate
hope
and
not.
bleak Republican Trump and whatnot, the world is going to end. If it's not bleak enough, let's move to something nicer.
And weather in Mumbai is kind of making up
Oh
for it
yes,
today.
it's nice. I mean, I'm liking it. I think the heat has gone down, which is great. But then very soon it's gonna get very humid. So if
Yeah,
anybody from Mumbai here, then they will get what I'm saying.
correct. So, how have you managed or balanced motherhood and career and leadership?
Yeah. Yeah, I do wonder that myself. But I think so. Just for everybody's sake who's on the call, so I'm a single mother, and then kind of that makes it a little bit more tough. I would say a little bit easy in certain areas. I don't have to ask anybody's permission for anything, right? I don't have a partner that I have to discuss things with. I just decide and I just go and do it. It's a different thing that sometimes I don't want to decide. I want somebody else to decide. That's a different problem. But I think it's been tough. See, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And like I promised, I'm going to be honest. And I always believe in authentic leadership. So I'm going to be very honest. It is not easy. There are days where it has been super tough, but then there are days I have got help from out of nowhere where I least expected. And then there are days where I have thrived because I've been able to achieve something in spite the odds. And that gives a very different confidence. So I would say it's all three of them, right? Now, when you are kind of managing like a high powered job or a I think stress levels are running very high. So I think it's very important for us to be able to time manage, to stress manage, and also kind of to ensure and understand that what are your key deliverables, and you have to be very clear on what your deliveries are. The more senior you become, you need to be very, very clear on what are the key things that you work on. I think I'm still learning that, but I think if you can manage your workload in a way, and then you can kind of a good team is important, but sometimes you do not get a good team always. It's external event. Internally, I think you should be able to identify support systems within the organization, outside the organization, being able to take on those, raise your hand and say, I need help. I think be able to do that. But I think the most thing that has helped me is project management at back home and at work. I think I do a lot of project management. I believe in giving quality time to my daughter. I do not, being a single mother, I do not get a lot of quantity time with her, but I make every minute count. The morning breakfast is for us to sing some random song she likes together. So I take every opportunity that I get, even 1 minute I get with her, I make it count. So that, and I ensure that every day almost I get 45 minutes. Doesn't happen on certain days, again, hand on heart, but majority of the time I do get that 30 minutes or 45 minutes. And I think that is enough for the child to feel that I think a lot of mothers, we kind of go overboard. We feel we need to do this and that. And there's nothing wrong, right? We can keep doing as much as we want. But if you want to balance it out, you have to have some time for yourself. So you give your best version to your child, son or daughter. You give your best version to your work. So I think just walking the tightrope, right? Some things will go up and down. Just readjust that like a project. You have to run it like a project. Just Yeah, I think that's what has helped me. Not that I still do it perfectly. There are days when I'm frustrated that I didn't give enough time to my daughter. I'm feeling very low. I overcompensate during the weekends. So then I would kind of, but I never bribe her with toys. One thing, I never ever bribe her with toys. I bribe her with my time, but I never bribe her with my toys, with her toys.
No, I agree with you. Prioritizing is so important, and you have to keep
Yeah.
prioritizing, reprioritizing, and reprioritizing all the time.
Yes,
Eh,
unfortunately, yes. There's no rainbow answer here. I'm sorry. I'm not going to give any rainbow answer. But I think at the end of it, when with this ups and downs that you will go through, and there will be these moments when you will be like, oh my God, she has learned this. Like my daughter has learned this. I didn't realize that she was listening when I was talking. Or oh my God, my team has finally delivered an analysis I wanted to a certain level. And like I didn't think. So I think then there are these moments where the effort that you're putting in, maybe you will not see it on day in, day out, but then suddenly, bam, you get to see the impact in some piece of work you have done, some recognition, and something that your daughter or your child does. And that tells you, but take that feedback. Don't forget about it. Pay attention to it and tell yourself, no, you're doing fine. I think that is very important. We tend to forget to do that, right? Just pat your back and say, okay, I've done a good job. If you don't do that, if you miss that, then, I think the motivation runs out through tiredness. There's immense physical tiredness at times. So you need to keep you physically fit. So eat well. I know, very stupid, heavy feedback, but it is so important to eat well, to sleep well. I can't stress enough that, when you're getting the right rest, you can function more. Don't see like 6 hours of sleep. I'm low on by 1 hour. If I get 4 hours of sleep, I can give 2 hours more to my daughter. No, I will be a grumpy mother to my daughter for those 2 hours. If I sleep 6 hours, even if I give her 45 minutes, I'm going to be a happy mother. Children don't measure by time, they measure by the engagement. And that's what matters.
Love it. I think that's really, really candid. So, Bidisha, loved talking to you. And I personally thought it was a great session. Of course, we'll get audience feedback. And yeah, we're already getting some feedback. So,
Hopefully,
really
everybody.
enjoyed the session. I personally enjoyed talking to you. And with that, I think I'll hand it over to Hiral. Hiral, would you like to run the audience Q&A?
Yes, I think Vidisha already answered one question by, sorry, I'll just scroll back a little. Yes, Shikha had asked that everybody wants experience, but what if we don't have experience in that domain? Uh, Vidisha, would you like to take it up? So,
Yeah, may I ask Shika to just elaborate a little bit on the question so I can answer properly?
Shikha, would you like to unmute yourself and elaborate?
Yes, so I am from non-IT background and I am transitioning my career after a career break. But I don't have experience in this domain, in banking domain, or as you were saying that transferable skills also matters, but I don't have that experience also. So in that case, what should I do? Should I take some courses and do them, and after that I should apply? Or I mean, I am confused right now what to do in this case.
Right. If I may ask, like, what's your area of expertise currently? Like, is there something that you've already worked on in any
Yes,
particular area?
so I was assistant professor for 2 years in
Okay.
civil engineering department,
Okay.
but now I am moving towards banking.
Okay.
Hmm.
Thanks for sharing, Shikha. So, yeah, I think experience matters, definitely. It kind of just gives us a credibility of, oh, somebody has worked on this area, hence we know that we can trust, because for an outsider applying, we don't know the person, right? So that's always going to be there. Now, to your point, yes, there are, I think one good thing in today's world is there are enough courses out there. Just ensure that you do a little bit of research around, first of all, what's your interest area, and then find the course, corresponding to that. We are much more open in today's, like bankers are much more open about, considering different certifications that you're doing. Even if you don't have an MBA, I don't think 5, 6 years back, we would, for some of the roles, I remember that there would be a minimum criteria of an MBA. Today, when I go look out for climate risk, it's not even a criteria that I look at, for example, right? So if you were to be interested in climate risk, you should do some good ESG certification like the SCR or something like that to show that, I have done a good certification. I know what, this about this topic. I may not have the experience. And then being able to kind of, then there's a bit of luck and factor around getting the right opportunity, somebody willing to listen to you. So use your networking. But absolutely, I think taking a course, and then of course, CV, just ensure you have a good CV and you use your CV with your past experience in a way, always, I would say, readjust your CV based on the job that you're applying to. So if you're applying to a particular type of job where a certain skill sets, I'm not saying lie, not saying that lie about it, but there are certain things required, and there are certain aspects of that you have done it as a professor, or even through your course, just highlight those things, right? So work on your CV and make it more flexible. Not one CV fits all kind of roles. I would say especially when you're transitioning, it's very, very important that you tailor the CV based on the job you're applying to. And then, of course, yes, courses do help, but do it from a proper, validated source. Like, just any random course may not carry the same weightage. So just research a little bit what course has a right weightage that industry acknowledges, it's well taken by the industry, stuff like that. Just take care of those elements.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Bidisha. We have a question from Dave, who leads the finance transformation in JP Morgan Chase,
Mhm.
and he's been in banking for the last 20 years. The question he has is on net zero commitment. Are these just theoretical exercises for reporting? Also, as someone leading the efforts, interested to know your challenges to drive the agenda.
Right. Thanks, Dave, for that question. And I mean, there is no, I won't say that's a yes and no answer, to be honest. So yes, net zero, start with a theoretical number on the paper, right? That's where it starts with. But a lot is about how, governments are coming together, how, these international bodies are coming together and countries are coming together. And there's this whole problem of developed nations versus developing nations. US being the biggest polluter, they have done their development. India is like, I'm just growing now, let me do my CO2 emissions, why are you stopping me, right? So there's this all this, underlying, I'm simplifying it, right? But I think that's the main crux of the issue, right? So nobody agrees to, getting to net zero with cutting down their growth. And the moment the political aspect comes to it, there is a delay in net zero. Absolutely. I wouldn't say it's just a on paper thing. It starts as on paper, but it's a lot of buying, lobbying of international bodies, of countries coming together. The threat is real. It's not going to go away. But I think political headwinds are quite important in terms of driving in successfully to those net zeros. It's a goalpost you can think that we are working towards. It's good to have that, people acknowledging, just getting their skin in the game, that I'm agreeing to a net zero target is the first step. Well, will they be hitting between you and me? We know they're not going to hit the target straight away, right? It's very tough. We are beyond 1.5 degree at this point, right? So it's not going to happen. But then again, it's still to keep us on that path. We still need that, goalpost that we can keep looking at. Uh, and a lot of it will be driven by political, unfortunately, the geopolitical tensions and the political inklings, and how, because the moment the US says that I am not interested, there's a competitive advantage they are getting, the companies. So we have to think of how Europe versus a UK versus a US company is going to work on. There will be a competitive advantage, and people will start, companies would raise their hand and say that I do not have that competitive. You're asking me to publish so many things based on net zero. Company X is going to get my clients. If I don't have a business, what is net zero for me? And that's a valid point, right? So we'll see how it grows. We see how it gets delayed or how it kind of evolves after 4 years. But I don't think it's just on like a theoretical thing. There are certain pieces of work happening, but yes, it's not maybe as robust, I would say, as it could have been maybe 2 years back. Uh, that would be my answer. I don't know if that answers or if you have a follow-up question.
Maybe I could just add, it's as you said rightly, that's going to be the political will which is going to be the driver. I mean, so far, everybody's been pushing in that direction. Suddenly, there has been a shift with the new Trump administration, but it's only in a particular region. I don't
Yeah.
think the other regions have kind of shifted their stance as of now.
Mm,
But we have to wait and see how the
yeah.
political will continues. And once there is a political will, the regulators will push the banks and the companies to move in that direction.
Yeah.
We've already seen a lot of frameworks coming out from the various
Yeah.
regulators to get people to get the institutions to comply.
Yeah, so ECB is not backing off. The European Union is not backing out.
Yeah.
UK is somewhere like in the middle. PR is somewhere in the middle. But there is a little bit of, from the reporting angle, there is an agreement that okay, that things can be a little lax. Otherwise, it's not business wise. It's not very practically how much feasible it will be. But yes, you're right. We don't see a backing off from our European regulators at all.
Thank you so much, Bidisha. And thank you, Naveeta ma'am, for expertly moderating today's session. I think, Bidisha, we have also received a lot of comments saying you've simplified a complex topic, and you have inspired all the mothers and women in general in our community who joined us today. And thanks for sharing those practical tips for those who are starting out in their careers. I think this has been truly enlightening session for all of us. And on behalf of all of us at our community at Aspire for Her, thank you so much. And we look forward to having you again on our platform.
Absolutely. I just want to thank Hiral. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and Navita as well. I think it was so great, to talk to you. And I hope, like, I just for everybody's sake, it's my first discussion with Navita. She's the one who said I need to simplify things, and I did take her feedback, and I tried to do it. And I'm very happy that if everybody felt that it was simplified. So Navita, I think you're successful in doing that. So thanks a lot, and I hope like sharing my story gives you something to take back and make it useful, hopefully. And yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely a
I
great
request
opportunity.
Farisha to launch a feedback poll. So everybody, please just stay back and answer the poll so that it helps us in organizing more such sessions in the future.
But let me take this opportunity to thank Bidisha. Bidisha, awesome meeting you. This was our first opportunity and first interaction, but it's been amazing. And also let me thank the AFH team, Hiral, Shikha, Farisha, Priya, everybody, all of y'all guys, y'all did a fantastic job. It was a seamless session, very well organized and very well curated. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much. All the best, everyone. Speak soon at some
Thank
point.
you. Thank you, everyone,
Thank
for
you.
participating.
Bye bye.
Bye.